Local leaders calling for George Santos, newly elected representative of Congress, to resign. The GOP calling there in the local area for him to resign, and George Santos says no, absolutely not. And this is just hilarious clown world. This is the guy who knows what happened. The guy fabricated, lied about his upbringing, his past, his resume. I mean, the fact that again, people, I don't know what's going on in New York over in this area. However, you had AOC, who was, I don't know, you tell me, was she a bartender? She was a paid actor? We have no idea. We have no idea who George Santos is. And people over there keep voting these people in. I'm flabbergasted. Not to call out New Yorkers over in this area. I think there's a lot of places in the country that probably would have done this as well. But this is hilarious. And this is, again, we just did a video on the FAA and what cleans this up and focusing and prioritizing on the wrong thing. When you go to Congress, when you have people, this is plunder and deceit. And this is I believe it was Frederick Bastiat who wrote the law, but then there's human action. And I can't remember now off the top of my head who wrote that, but I believe that was where they talked about plunder and deceit. When humans understand that they can devote themselves a living through welfare type of benefits and devote themselves cash from the currency printer, then they tend to start doing that, plunder. The humans start going towards plunder, and politicians do the same thing instead of doing the actual work, the proof of work. And I think this is where, again, Bitcoin, my family always makes fun of me because I did the political thing for 12 years, and then the last 10 years, so the last 22 years has been about politics for me and studying history and U.S. history, and then the last 10 years for me have been building businesses and investing. So I've seen both ends of the spectrum, and you can't understand one side without the other. You can't understand politics if you don't understand the money, and you can't understand money unless you understand the politics. So you have to understand these two things, and this is the framework that I see everything from for 22 years of studying both sides, politics and money. And the money is really at the top of the spectrum here. It's they're the top of the pyramid. The money controls everything. It's the Rothschild quote. I care not who makes the nation's laws. I don't care if it's George Santos or Nancy Pelosi or Joe Biden or Donald Trump. If I control the money printer, if I'm Jay Powell, if I'm the Bank of International Settlements, if I'm the IMF, the people at the top, then I don't care. If I make the money, I rule the world. And that's what we've been dealing with for 100 years. This is why the Founding Fathers wanted to get rid of the central banks and didn't want central banks. And we had them twice in the 1800s. We got rid of them. And then we've had it now a third time. They had to keep ramming it down everyone's throats. And finally, they rammed it down again, oddly enough, just like the Omnibus Bill, right late, like December 23rd. I think it was the same day. The Federal Reserve Act was passed the same day, I believe, in 1913. Didn't come into existence until 1914, right before they had not the recession, but everyone home and had the holiday. So right before Congress went home, they jammed it in right before everyone celebrating Christmas, and no one knew. And finally, it took years for them to get it through. And Creature from Jekyll Island is an amazing book by G. Edward Griffin. You have to understand. If there's one thing you do, please go use Chat GPT. Go find a synopsis of Creature from Jekyll Island. Go look at a couple of them, or read the book if you can, or listen to it. You have to read that to understand what is going on in this world. If you don't understand that book, nothing I'm saying to you is going to make sense. Nothing you're seeing in media is going to make sense. Politics are not going to make sense to you. Nothing. The name of the game, as G. Edward Griffin puts in there, is bailouts. Central banks, bailouts, and bail-ins. It's usurping wealth. It's stealing the wealth from the average person and then to the banking class. At the end of the day, someone owns the Federal Reserve. It's not the people. None of us own it. It's called the Federal Reserve, but there's no reserves and it's not federal. It's a private organization. And when people start understanding the origins of what we're dealing with, then you start to see, oh my goodness, we've been lied to our entire life. And that, I know, right there, stop. That's a very hard concept to understand, that what I just said. Your entire life has been a lie. You've been trading your time, your finite time and energy, for infinite pieces of paper, infinite digits in a computer. We used to have gold on our dollars, which are claim checks for actual money for gold back in the day. And silver was actually used much more for money throughout history. But gold used to be on our dollar, and then they took it off, dang near 100 years ago, about 80, 90 years ago, they took it off the money, and FDR started trying to repatriate and take everyone's gold and stealing everyone's gold. The citizens here in America, Order 6102, executive order, and trying to steal their gold and then revalued it. Basically cut, if you held on your gold and didn't give it to the government, you doubled your wealth. Gold went from $20 an ounce to $35 an ounce overnight, from a Friday to a Monday. So those that did that and gave it to the government, they lost. You just lost half your wealth overnight. So again, if you don't understand these origins, stuff like this is going to happen. I mean, this is comedy. This is absolute peak clown world. You know, the AOC is the female version of him, and he's the female version. But all politicians are like this. This is what happens when you have too big of a government, a federal government. It incentivizes morons to come to power. And let's call them as we see them. It incentivizes morons to come to power. It incentivizes evil people to come to power. It incentivizes bad actors to come and do more of the same and plunder and deceive their way to power. Because they understand they have the ability to issue currency and spend, you know, like the omnibus bill that just got passed, nearly $2 trillion. They can shove whatever they want in it and go back to their constituents and say, look what I did for you. Again, John F. Kennedy told us, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Think about, he was a Democrat. Think about how far we've come. That was 80 years ago. 80 years ago. And think the Democrats were saying that. So that's how far the Overton window has shifted. It's just beyond frustrating. Again, please like and subscribe to the channel. If you like what we're doing here, please let us know what you'd like to see more of. And things like this, I think they're very important. These things that get big, you know, this is trending things today, the FAA thing we did about the FAA. Easy ways to fix this. Easy ways. And quite honestly, we don't need a lot of these organizations. You know, what is the TSA doing for us? What is the Patriot Act doing? What is the IRS doing? The IRS, oddly enough, speaking of the Federal Reserve, was created the same year, ironically, as the Federal Reserve. That's very interesting. Why is that? Because they started issuing debt and they needed a way to pay for that debt. So they hoodwinked all the citizens and got into World War I. Oh, we need a way to pay for war. So we're just going to tax you a little bit. We're just going to start taxing you. And then that just kept creeping and never went away. It was a temporary tax. And it never went away. Never went away. So, you know, actually, and we'll do it right here. It's a temporary tax as to where things are going. I don't know why it says 1862, unless it came back in different times. Or sorry, I'm sorry, the IRS might have come in earlier, but the income tax, I'm sorry, the income tax was instituted when the Federal Reserve was created. So, so speaking of this, I'm glad I looked this up actually, because I spoke incorrectly. And what happened really that first 30, 40, 50 years before the income tax, it was hard to tax people in general because a lot of the payments were just, you know, cash or gold, things like that. So it was very hard to track. You couldn't track it. And then once they started kind of centralizing and federalizing everything, then, you know, they started doing payroll taxes, income tax. Then it started to be easier to track everyone. And then they started taking out, in those coming decades, they started taking out withholding, you know, a payroll tax, things like that, and started just taking out before you could even get it. They said, I ain't trusting the person to give me that back. I'm taking it before I even give it to the citizen. And then ironically, this is where it's really hilarious. We have the thing we've shared before many times, the American Affairs article from the 40s with Rudyard Himmel. I think his name was Rudyard Himmel from the 40s, the New York Fed chair, saying why taxes are obsolete. He wrote an article, why taxes are obsolete. And he went in there basically and just said, we can print currency. Like, we don't actually need your tax dollars. It's just, I don't know why you would think that. We just do it just to like redistribute wealth and coerce you to do certain things. There's like 4 bullet points, but those are like the main ones that were probably the most important. So think about that. I mean, this is where, again, I get so frustrated and I get so heated about this. I'm so passionate about it because it's a literal theft from you and I. People are just stealing things and just spraying it around, redistributing it wherever they want. And then we all just take it. Like that's normal part of life. Like, you know what? God put us on here on earth just to go work in a pod, like we're in the Matrix, and then just go get our energy and our life force siphoned away by some, you know, peon over here in the Federal Reserve or at the Bank of International Settlements, and they, you know what, they just get to spend all of our time, energy, and money, or time and energy, which is our money. They just get to steal it from us and, you know, suck it all away, and they get to do it. You know, they're the kings and queens of the world, and they get to do it. Yippee! Let me sign me up for another day of that. And then we wonder why people have mental health crisis now, opioid crisis, people have midlife crisis, suicide rates so high, because we're getting just literal theft every single day, and no one knows why. Bitcoin, no. Bitcoin is what destroys all that. Laser eyes going right through all this, comically enough. So I have great hope. I have great hope because people are starting to wake up with decentralized media, decentralized money now, separation of church and state, separation of just people from the governments. This is the future we have, and we're not shackled by these people at the top anymore. So please like and subscribe to the channel. Please let me know what we could do more of, what we could do better of. Please share it with someone that you think might get something out of this and might appreciate this. George Santos, AOC, all these clowns. I mean, this is going to keep happening for a little while. We got to flush this stuff out of the system. And fixing the money will fix the world. Fixing the money will heal things. Not going to happen overnight, but it's going to be a process. We're seeing it in El Salvador already. It's been a year, just over a year, and they have unbelievable GDP growth, tourism growth, and you're seeing obviously people going away, bad people going away, getting locked up. And people can debate that all they want, but time will tell. Obviously, in the coming years, and it's on a great trajectory. Could be going the other way right now, but it's not. When you start fixing the money, it starts reining in and incentivizing, aligns incentives, and incentivizes good people to come into power. Because when the federal government has limited power, then what bad person or what evil person is going to want to go to the government? If there's no power in the government, then they're going to be like, yeah, I'll find something else to do. I don't need to do that. I don't need to be in the government. But when the government is so powerful, so big, and so intrusive, ooh, yeah, that gets all the boys to the yard. That gets all of the criminals, all the professional criminals, to clamor to the suckling at the teat. That just gets them all to the yard, all to DC, and now we have what we have. We live in a system where we're all felons, we're all criminals at any given point of any day, every day, until we change it. Appreciate you. Appreciate your time. It's the most important asset we have. Only finite when we have like Bitcoin. Bitcoin is time, and time is Bitcoin. And again, please like and subscribe. Please share this if you got something out of this. And if you think someone could get something out of this as well. Maybe it's, like I've been saying, it can't be a messiah. It's hard to be a messiah in your own town. So maybe someone you've been talking to needs to hear this from a different person. I know that all too well. And this is not financial advice. It's freedom advice. We look forward to seeing you on the next one.